Right, year 4, we're carrying on with our photo study, and we're looking at creating a tonal gradient. So what you're going to have a go at today is not painting your photograph, but painting a sphere with a background. Now, the paint that I'm using is acrylic, so I've got a big splodge of white and a little splodge of black. If you haven't got acrylic, you can use watercolours, but you will almost always need more white than you do black, because we're going to be mixing a few different shades that go from white to black, and that's called the tonal gradient. So at one end of the spectrum, we've got the white, at the other end, we've got the black, and then in the middle, I'm going to demonstrate that now, we have what we call a midpoint that's a grey. And then on this end of the spectrum, it's going to be a lighter grey. And on this end of the spectrum, it's going to be a darker grey. So some artists are able to make 9 or more different gradients. We're just going to focus on doing these 5. So white, very light grey, medium grey, dark grey, and black. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block in black where the black's going to go. So you're going to have a sphere. Well, it starts off like a circle. We're going to make it look like a sphere. A circle with a line. It almost looks a little bit like Pokemon or the Japanese flag, but this is your starting point. And then you're going to put some of your darkest paint in the background. Now, the general rule with art is you should start with a background. That tends to be the golden rule. Do your background first. So I'm putting in my darkest colour here, and it's going to kind of wrap around my sphere to about here. Then I'm going to put some dark on my sphere just here. Okay, then I'm going to do my darkest shade like a shadow. Now this might be a little bit tricky. You're going to come out like a straight line, then you're going to turn the corner, and you're going to come back to kind of meet up underneath here. Okay, so this is representing the shadow that my sphere is casting. And when you add shadow to a 2D image, you make it look more 3D, because your mind tricks you into thinking it's a solid object that's casting a shadow. So let's fill the shadow in here. Okay. So these are my darkest areas. I'm actually going to take the black almost to the edge here. I'm going to just blend these out. Okay, then I'm going to take my darker grey, and I'm going to blend that next to it. Now, the thing with acrylic is, once it's dry, you can't blend it. So if you want these to blend together, you're going to have to add a little bit of water before it dries. Okay, so we're just blending these together. Now, the finishing touches, and obviously we're not anywhere near the finishing touches yet, but the finishing touches would be to go back in and put in some of your darkest and lightest areas. So we can always do that at the end, but for now, the trick is to blend this to the edge before it dries. Okay. Right, so I'm building up my background, and I'm going to have, I think, this kind of mid light grey. Let's add some more white to that. You always use more white than you do black. That's why whenever you buy a paint set, you'll usually find the white paint is about twice as big as every other colour, because you'll use white the most. So whenever you're making your palette for this gradient work, you will make your splodge of white much bigger than your splodge of black. Okay, right, now whenever you're painting at the edge of the sphere, you've got to keep your brush strokes as accurate as you can to maintain the shape. Okay. And I'm going to use water and blend this out. Okay. Now the reason we're doing this is because when we come to paint our black and white photograph, you need to be using this gradient from white to black, because these are all the shades and the tones that are going to be in your picture, in your photograph that you're recreating. So you need to have a go at creating these different shades of grey in your picture. So this is going to be quite light round here. So this edge, where these edges meet, there's going to be a definite colour difference. Okay, it's going to be quite bright on the table and slightly darker on the background behind. Okay, so bring that to here. And then where the table meets the shadow, I'm going to make it slightly darker. Now, we actually want to keep a hard edge where our shadow is. So I'm going to paint around the shadow. In this kind of middle grey. Okay. And before this dries, I'm going to add some water and blend it out a little bit. Okay. Let's just move that so you can see right down to the bottom. Okay, there we go. Okay. And then I'm going to go a little bit darker down in this corner here. So I'm going to get some of my middle grey and put it down in the corner here. And then using water, I'm just going to blend it up a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to make it, see how this area here is light? I'm going to make this area here the same kind of shade, the same kind of tone, so quite light. Okay, so here it comes here. So there's a very obvious contrast between the table and the wall behind. Okay, it's going to be quite bright around here. I might even take some white and bring that round here. Okay. And I'm just going to fill that in. Okay, so now the sphere itself, because the shadow's over here, it means the light's coming from this direction. So this part of the ball is going to be by far the lightest area. So I'm going to start by taking my white and putting it all around this area here, because this is where the light is hitting the sphere. Okay, and I'm going to let it come as far as the middle now. You can't see it so well, but once I blend some grey, it will show up a bit more. Okay, then I'm going to go slightly lighter. So I go the next level down. and I'm going to just add that in here. So let's just, so we've got the lightest, then we've got the lighter grey around the edge, then we're going to go medium grey is going to come round here. And then my darkest grey. And if it starts to dry up, just reactivate it with some new paint. So my darkest grey is going to go kind of here. And that's going to go around this edge here. Okay. Okay. And then I'm just going to use a wet brush just to try and blend this slightly. So try and maintain the shape. Okay. And then the final touch is just going to be carefully dry it slightly, because I want to just put in my darkest details at the end. Now there's a couple of options for this. You can actually do it with a black pencil. So if you're struggling to get detail with a brush, you can always use a black pencil to put in some of those more trickier details. Or if you're feeling confident with your brush, you can just use that. So I'm going to get some black paint, and I'm just going to put in a little bit of an edge there, a little bit of an edge there. And just where my shadow got a little bit covered up, I'm just putting that back in again. Okay. And that is how we use a gradient from white to black on our picture to make it look 3D. All right, thank you for